Welcome to the Mangrove Community, strengthening the community one branch at a time. For more information about the community or how to volunteer, please visit mangrovecommunity.org.
All right, so we're back with another episode of Mangrove Community presents Reasonable Doubt. And so we're here today and we're talking about a topic that has become very interesting to me, and I would like to get more insight on it because I believe it's very important for our community and our schools. We have a guest here today. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
How y'all doing? Carlos J Malave, and I'm from Translating Success LLC.
Translated Success. All right. So just let us know a little bit about yourself, your background, where you're from, background, career-wise, things like that.
Cool. So once again, my name is Carlos J Malave, and I run my own consulting company called Translating Success LLC, where I've built a curriculum and I go into schools and to help implement restorative practices within classrooms and administrative boards and everything like that. So the whole thing, when it came up, I've been in education for about 9 years.
Okay.
So with education, I taught all different subjects, and I started speaking my business. I created my own speaking business about 5 years ago.
Okay.
When I first moved out here in Texas. I'm from New York City originally, and I moved out here 5 years with my 1-year-old daughter and my wife.
Okay.
And
what brought you to Houston?
Well, my wife is from Trinidad and Tobago, so she's from the Caribbean island. The weather is much nicer out here.
Got tired of those cold winters.
Yeah, for sure. And for me, it was like I've always been someone to just go and take the risk. And I remember I was working. I was teaching and coaching and doing a lot, and I just had a moment, and I talked to my wife, and I was just like, yo, let's just do something different. Let's move. And I applied everywhere, like Singapore, China. I was ready to get up out of here.
Just wherever,
wherever. And Houston hit me up first. Yes Prep Public Schools was the first school that hit me up. So when I came out here, I taught. The first year I was teaching seminar, which is college readiness class and life skills. That's where it started.
Gotcha.
And before then, I was speaking at colleges and programs. I'm a former college basketball player as well, so I kept on getting called back to speak to basketball programs, sports programs, and then my alumni.
Gotcha.
And then when I came out here to Houston, I found out that it's like a business, like a career in speaking.
Okay.
And I ain't really know that. So when I got into it, I'm like, yo, I've been doing this for a couple years now. I have experience speaking in big crowds. I'm good at it. And so let me find out the business behind it.
Right.
So I created my business, my brand, speaking, and then last year. So I taught at Yes Prep for 3 years, and I was speaking all over. And Kip Houston High School is one of the schools that I work with, where I came into this school. I had written a book that was implemented into their freshman seminar class.
And that was with Kip?
With Kip, yeah.
Okay.
So I wrote the book while I was at Yes Prep. It's called Translating Success. It's on Amazon and all, online everywhere where you could buy Barnes and Nobles or whatnot. But I wrote the book as a tool. So I was the example, examples of being an athlete, a son, a father, a husband, all aspects of my life. And then at the end of each chapter is reflection questions on your own stuff.
Okay.
So like the first chapter, I talk about how I found out addiction was real. And it was by finding my father drunk, blacked out in the tub at like 3 a.m. in the morning with the shower. He's fully clothed, Tim's on and boots, and jeans, and he's laid out, and he got the shower on him trying to wake himself up. And that's when I was about like 8 or 9, and that's where it hit me like, yo, there's an issue.
Right. So you're taking your real life experiences,
exactly,
and you were putting them into a book.
Yeah.
And I guess telling how you eventually overcame these experiences and things like that.
And the thing is, the thing with that, I wanted to be the example, because the only way you get to get someone to think about their mother is by you talking about your mother, right? So for me, I had that concept in my head. It's like, yo, let me use my vulnerability to open up, and then they can open up themselves. So the first question of chapter 1 is like, who do you need to talk to? Because it became like I was angry with my father for so long. It used to be like, yo, why don't you just stop drinking? Like, he would disappear. He was like, he dealt with a lot of anger situation, and he used alcohol and other stuff to, like, you know what I mean, deal with it. And instead of asking him, you know, for a long time I was like angry and asking him, just stop, blah, blah, blah. And then everything shifted when I was like, yo, why do you drink? What causes you to continue to feel like you need something to relieve some pain? Right? So the first question is, who do you need to talk to? Why you need to write down those questions, why? And then go have that conversation and write down the response. So I created that book in all different aspects of my life. And then I hated reading, so I made the book 100 pages.
Okay, so a quick read.
Yeah, quick read. Every chapter is 3 to 4 pages long, and then at the end it reflects the question. And you don't have to read the last chapter to read the next chapter. It just like it's something you can take, like, a different steps in your life.
So you can read it you don't have to read it in sequential order.
Exactly.
Well, that's pretty cool. So I guess going back, what was it something that you saw in your students coming through the years, or is it just something that you felt you had to put out there? Did you see yourself in a lot of the students coming up that made you want to write this book?
Absolutely. When I did the seminar class, middle school seminar class, high school readiness class, I was dealing with these situations where I was trying to build a curriculum from scratch. This was the first time they had this class. So I was coming from New York. I had teaching experience in New York and coaching experience. And then coming in here, and this was all new to me. So I was learning with the kids. And the kids had their own trauma they're going through, and I'm building relationships. And I'm learning how to have empathy, not sympathy. And that was key, right? Like, I've been through trauma, but I don't understand your trauma. And I had to, that's where I learned, like, okay, like, I need to be able to say, how do I support this person? I don't really know what that feels like. Instead of like saying what teachers are always trained to say, I understand. You should be able to do this, that, and the third. And sometimes we really just don't understand. And I really like opened up to that in seminar class. And that's why I wrote the book, like seeing them and them needing an example of, I started seeing myself as an example for them, because they would look at me as this teacher. I made it, but they don't know that I went through similar type things or like my own trauma, and then I processed it. So when I wrote the book and I taught there 3 more years at Yes Prep, and then KIPP, I was speaking at KIPP for a couple years, and then KIPP created a position for me. The principal took a liking to me, the book, and was implemented into their school, and I kept on coming back and doing engagements. And then he created the Restorative Justice Coordinator position.
Restorative Justice Coordinator.
Coordinator on campus. So what that entailed was I was working with administrators, teachers, and students alike to build relationships and help people be able to get to the root cause. And then instead of like suspending kids and expelling kids, which statistically does not work, right? Over time, like, they have statistics for days where that just does not resolve the situation.
They don't have proof where suspending a kid will improve his behavior.
Exactly, it never works.
Make it where he won't repeat the behavior again.
It just takes care of the issue for a couple days, and the kid comes back angry and not understanding why and how to fix it. You know what I mean? It's just like a cover up. But basically, the principal saw a need for it, and he saw my relationship building. I would come to these speaking engagements, and some people speak like they'll come for a certain slot in the day and speak, and then they bounce, right? For me, it was a whole day experience, right? I wanted to be there from the bell ringing in the morning, greeting kids at the door, getting a vibe of the school and what they really needed, and building relationships. And now after I speak, I will stay. Like, I had lunch with the kids, and that he saw that, and the relationship building stuff was there naturally. That's what I wanted to do. And then he created the position. And then it was just like a whole learning experience where I had to really, like, I saw, like, on a whole nother level, like, everybody has their stuff, but who's really identifying it, right? Everybody has trauma, but not everybody identifies it as trauma, right? And then it's just covering up. And when I was at Kip Houston High School, I taught a course, one class, where I had student leaders, juniors and seniors. And what I did with them, we call it the Restorative Justice Council. What I did with them, I gave them training in conflict resolution, Radical Candor, which is a book written by Kim Scott on leadership with compassion, but being direct, right? And then circle leading skills. And then once we get the training the first semester, towards the end of the semester, we started going out into classrooms and in the school, right, and dealing with situations. So it got to the point like, yo, Jeffrey, there's a situation in this class. I need you to talk to the student and then figure out what happened with the teacher, get them to be able to have a conversation. So the kids started becoming.
So it might be a situation where a teacher and a student may have words in the classroom, and it gets reported back to you all, and you come in for the conflict resolution portion.
And they were getting the training. So it started with me doing it and them like watching me. I would bring like, I had a student, Ibrahim, he was like, yo, come with me, watch how I do it, then you want. So that was the training, right? And then in classroom, we had these conversations, how it, like, what happens if, what if this happens? And then we come up with solution and play things out. And then we started doing it. And then even like student situations, right? So the students, and it changed the culture. Like I was like, yo, damn, this works, right? And the thing was the class was not mix of just like the kids that were super good at school. It was a mix of kids that had all different experiences. So I could pick and choose like, yo, I feel like you could relate to this situation. You could relate to that situation. And we're going to work this out.
That's what's up, man.
So when we did that, and then we started going to, I used my network with speaking. I had connections and I started going to, taking them to field trips to go to other schools and doing the work at elementary schools, high schools, middle schools. And then we were able to get on ABC News. They did a little feature on us from what we was doing. And then from that, so the first semester was amazing. Like we making mad progress. We got on ABC News. We getting recognition. And then on January 10th, 2019, a couple months ago, my father committed suicide.
Oh man.
Yeah, so it just like, it was shocking. I was very close to my father. He was dealing with stuff, but like, and when I wrote in the book, once I started asking the right questions, it became like me learning from like what happened to him, and so that I don't like, I started seeing the patterns, right? Like, oh, okay, so you'd never learn how to communicate, right? You were abused, you didn't know how to deal with that. You just continue to add responsibilities and had this whole thing of like, I'm a man, I need to deal with it, don't talk about it. So I learned that, right? And I built this relationship with my father where we talked about everything. He got to the point he was telling me about stuff with my moms that maybe I should not be knowing, but like, and then stuff that was happening with my siblings. So we talked on all different types of levels. And I remember he had called me right before he did it, and ironically I didn't pick up because I was talking to two kids about their relationships with their fathers. Right? So like, it just like hit me on a whole nother level. And then, you know, I had to go through that trauma. That became my trauma where middle of the year, everything going well, and then boom. And it's like, basically the universe was talking to me like, okay, you want to be about this life, let's now you got to really do this. And I had a decision. I took a couple weeks off, you know, of work. We just got back from Christmas break, and then that happened January 10th. And it just, I had to go home because it was my father jumped in front of a train. Oh man! So this was in New York. In New York, right? In front of the L train, which it comes full circle later on because I work with a school and I take the same train so I could just be there and feel like, okay, what may go through his head or whatever. But before that, like he did that, and then that happened January 10th, right? But he passed away January 12th. He was on life support and everything like that. But I got to see that, right? And I had to see the whole family grieving. I'm the oldest of three, and I'm always the one that people lean on. So I had to be strong and all that. And I had to go through that whole process of like really being able to figure out what was going on, right? And I remember my wife hit me. My wife was talking to me and she was like, you know what I mean, I'm scared for you.
Yeah.
And I was like, what you mean? It was like, because for so long, your whole life you had this measuring stick with your father, right? You always try to compare yourself. Like, my father trained me to be better than him.
Right.
Like, he was like, every generation is supposed to do better than the last.
Right.
So his mission was like to protect me from all the bull. My father from the street. Like, he was in gangs. He did all the stuff that I didn't have. Like, Hove had this song, and it stuck with me. Hove did that, so hopefully you won't have to go through that, right? And I remember that song because I remember being young, and I just switched the words up, and I looked at my father like that.
Right.
He went through all the bullshit, so I wouldn't have to go through it. So that's how I looked at it. My father protected me. Like, I knew people in the street that were like real into it, right? And they wouldn't mess with me, and they would be like, "Oh, you Carlos' son, right?"
You had that respect.
You Carlos' son, right? Like, my father was doing some wild stuff, and I would hear stories. I'd be like, "Yo, you was doing that with them?
Yeah.
What?"
And in your mind is like you say, that's your measure. So if you're not going that route, not doing that, then I'm doing better than Pops was, which is what he wanted me to do in the first place.
And then my wife was like, "You had this measuring stick, but now it's gone.
Right.
Who are you?" She asked me just like that. Who are you? And I was like, I don't know. The next day I went to therapy, right? And I like, therapy was crazy. My father went to therapy. He was like, "This is bullshit.
Right.
Like, this don't make no sense. They don't give you no answers. You just talking. They know your business. If it's stupid, I don't learn nothing." And then when I went, I had all this stuff in my head, like what therapy was.
Right.
And then,
which a lot of us do in our community. We have it's taboo, like you say, people gonna get in our business, talking to a stranger and things like that. But so you went to therapy, and
the thing, and going back on that, I seen an interview on the Breakfast Club with Dr. What's his name? Dr. Umar.
Umar.
Yeah, the amazing mind that, you know what I mean, he had 2 interviews on it, but he had one recently, where he talked about that, like, back in the day in history, when Black people went to therapy, right? It was something in there where the therapist, if it felt like if there was something threatening or worrisome, the therapist can tell on them. So then they built that fear, and that's way back in the day where it built that fear, and that's where it comes from, where we're putting this, the Black and brown people are put in this place like, don't go to therapy because it's like they're gonna rat on you. They're gonna
label you.
You know what I mean? You talk about your son's trauma or what's going on with your son, and then they tell on your son gets arrested, or you know what I mean, and they come after. So it became a like, let's not do it. So that it just meant, I saw the Breakfast Club interview yesterday, and I was like, oh damn, that makes sense. How it all trickled down.
But see, if we go back and really know our history, therapy, psychology, all of that started back in Africa with the tribes, and it actually started with the men. They would go off and they would sit in circles, and they would talk about things that were going on with them, and through one another they would figure out how they can overcome these things. So it started with us, but like everything else, it's it's going through the ringer throughout the years. But so how did therapy help you though when you actually went?
So when I went, I'm sitting there and I have all this ideology from my past, like what therapy is, whatever. They're not really gonna help. So I'm sitting there and I'm talking, and she asked, and I'm just like, F it, let me just try it. Like, I gave my, like, midway through, I was like, whatever. And I just said what was going on with me, and then it clicked. I wasn't there for any answers. I'm not there to get any type of information from you. It's for me to be able to let it out. And with your license, you can't walk out of here with this information. And by me having this space to let it out, I don't have to worry about, wait, that person didn't talk. Let me ask them. I don't want to over talk. There's a place where you can just let it all out and leave it there, right? Because my wife was that for me. But I noticed when you have a partner, and this is what people do, they try to use it with their partner. And when I would do it with my wife, but it gets to a point where, like, I'm over talking, I'm putting too much on her shoulders, and vice versa. She feels like she's putting too much on my shoulders, so you don't like truly like get into it for as long as you really want to.
You feel like you got boundaries.
Yeah. And you got to be like, okay, let me ask her a question, let me ask him a question, right? So there's that battle, right? With therapy, for me at least, it just became like, F all that. I could just say everything for however long I got this session for, right? And just let it out. And then it started hitting me like, the more I talked about it, the more I identified what it was.
Right.
What
you were able to deal with
exactly,
it.
What the fuck, what I was going through.
Right.
And then I realized, like, going back to with what happened to my father grew up without his father. His father committed suicide when my father was 4.
Wow.
And my father's father jumped in front of a truck. My father jumped in front of a train. So, like, I learned that all through his past, and I'm like, yo, fuck, like, there's a pattern here, right? And who knows, you know, back in time, like, if you look back into history, like, it probably is a pattern that kept going and skipped like a generation or two and then came back, right? Because of all what? Now, then my father's father was an alcoholic as well.
Right.
Not dealing with trauma, finding other, like, stuff to numb the pain.
And it is studies that show that can be passed on genetically.
Exactly.
Right? You know,
exactly.
Those type of, going through that type of trauma, it could just automatically be passed through the DNA. And man, wow, that's an amazing story, man. And definitely sorry to hear about that. Prayers go out to you and your family, man. And it's just a blessing that you were able to identify that and do something with it. Now, we talked about, like, you asked the question with your dad, why? To me, that's like the basis of restorative justice. And for the people that don't know, can you explain what restorative justice truly is and the benefits it has?
Got you. So restorative justice is about getting to the root cause of what's actually going on with us personally, right? So they're trying to replace it as replacing discipline for it, right?
Okay.
And it's becoming a thing, right? But with my experience and the gap that I've been seeing, I'm trying to make it more of a lifestyle shit for educators and for students alike. It shouldn't just be done for students when they're dealing with stuff. It should be a norm within schools, right? For teachers and students and administrators to deal with their own stuff, right? So the mission is to be able to identify why we have triggers, what are our triggers, what are our biases, right? And then let's deal with that so that we can be better people in these spaces, right?
And when you say triggers, because I guess that's another thing that we're going to have to start talking about, like you say, in our community, and it becoming the norm, just like in therapy, where you're able to talk about things and get things out so you can identify it as an issue. Like you said, to recognize your triggers. These triggers can come from home, from traumas at home, traumas that you see and face in the community, and things like that. And you bring them into school, and like you say, unless it's identified, you may not necessarily know why you're reacting a certain way. And restorative justice steps in to help them identify that.
Exactly. So, and back to get back to, like, what happened with everything, because it will answer that question. So I went to therapy, I'm figuring everything out, and then I decided to go back to work, right? This happened in January, I got back to work like mid-February, right? And I go back and everybody like shocked that I came back because I had this mission now, right? It was like, it was bigger than me. It was no longer something to make me get on this platform and build my brand and have like a niche. It became like I legit started feeling like if my father had this work, right, or this exposure earlier on, it would have saved his life. Because I looked at how he dealt with his anger. My dad had a lot of trauma from young. He was abused as a kid. He's seen domestic violence all around him. He grew up without a father, very poor, right? I mean, and then he just kept going through it, and he worked a construction job that he hated for 30 plus years. Had arguments with people at work, but didn't know how to articulate himself, and he went to anger, and then anger led him to do dumb stuff, right? So I really felt like if he had the work, it would have saved his life. So what I did was I finished off the year, and I had this curriculum, and I had this bigger purpose. It wasn't about me, and it felt like I used like my story to be able to connect to students even more, and it became like I was identifying what the hell I was going through through the work, and it became something that made me, I started using the practices of how to like deal with conflict, how to talk to people, how to like identify my bullshit, right? And be able to say like, okay, I'm wrong, like learning from kids and administrators and teachers alike, right? So it not only made me a better employee, I started taking the practice home.
Right.
And I realized like I became a better husband.
Wow.
I became a better father, a better son to my mother, a better sibling, a better friend, right? And I just started becoming more present, right? Like I need to be in tune. Everything just go.
Right.
And it slowed everything down to the point where I wanted to build relationships, because the concept of restorative practice is building relationships.
Gotcha.
But everybody's saying it, but who really doing it, right? Like, so like for me, it was like, yo, I will go play ball and I'll talk with someone, and then I'll just, you know what I mean, I'm out. But this, like, I started going to play ball. I played ball for 2 hours with my boy, and then we sat down on the side for like 4 hours just talking about life, right? And then like with my wife, like I noticed that like usually like skills that I taught my kids, right? We talked about dyads, which are like intimate conversations. You go knee to knee. We had this activity, it's in my curriculum. So like you write down a conversation with someone that you needed to have, or that they ain't here no more, or that you need to have right now. Write it down, and then you're gonna act it out. So you're gonna go knee to knee, real uncomfortable, look them in the eye.
Right.
And the purpose is one person's gonna focus on just active listening. Because when we listening sometimes, like we focusing on giving that person affirmation, like we shaking our head, we saying yeah, and then we lose track of what they saying. I seen this happen with my wife. Like she talking, and then I'm focusing on going like this and being like yeah, and then I like forget what the hell she said like two words earlier, and I'm trying to pick up. I'm like, that's not listening. So and then the other person's focusing on like not worrying about all the bullshit we're trained to think, like whatever happens in the household stays in the household, whatever, like don't talk about your shit, you're gonna look weak, right? So it's more about, nah, F all that killed my father. Let's talk about it more so that we know it better than anybody. So I don't give a damn who knows my shit. I know it better than everybody, and you ain't gonna make me feel bad about it, because I talk
be the one to put it out there.
Exactly. So, and I'm gonna control the narrative, right? So that's the mission, right? So we doing that, and then I'm taking that home, right? I'm doing it with the kids, and then I'm taking it home. I'm like, let me do this with my wife. Let me do this with my child, right? Okay, she's 5. 5 is hard, right? So like that's a big training. My daughter, like, she could be like a lot of explaining and a lot of patience goes into that. So sometimes it's like, okay, restorative, right? It's a lifestyle, not a practice. So like for me, it's like it became something that I'm using all day, right? So everything's aligning now. So at the end of the year, I made a huge decision with the support of my wife. My dad's life insurance came in, which was surprising. I didn't even know it was gonna come in. And we talked about it. My wife was like, yo, like, take the leap. Go, like this is what he would want. And I quit my job at KIP, and I started my Translating Success business full-time. I copywrote my curriculum, which aligned to ELA TEAC standards, lesson plans, unit plans, assessments, projects, and something that people, and I sat down with ELA teachers, administrators to, all the bull to like get it on paper and make it legit.
So it lined up with everybody.
Exactly, because most times it's like, everybody has the idea, but they don't have the paperwork to back it up to get it in the door, right? So I did all the paperwork, I did all the groundwork, and I copywrote it, and then now I'm packaging it where you can use it in all different ways. You can implement it in your classroom, right? Where you can start using it once a week, every 2 weeks, once a month, whatever, where you're building it as a norm. Kids are getting exposed to what circles are, what are dyads, why is it important, and it has like literature in there where you can read passages, articulate, and break down what help you pass these big ass tests they got to take anyway. So I did all that to be able to implement it a little bit, because I will go to these conferences, restorative justice conferences, and I'm learning from these people. They're doing great presentations. They do show you a circle. You feel good about it. Then you go back in the classroom. It's like, how the hell am I going to be able to do that in here? Right? And everybody I talked to had that same thing. Like, yo, that's great. How that work in here?
Is it the time?
Exactly.
Or you don't have the time in which they do it, you don't have that time to do it.
Exactly. Or you don't have like the culture set from top to bottom. It's like, yo, gap. How do I fill this gap?
Gotcha.
So for my curriculum, it was like, boom, gap filled, right? So now I got a curriculum where you see me speak, it sounds amazing. You hear my story, you see what I've done, all my credentials, but now I have you walk away with 30 plus lesson plans, unit plans, curriculum, everything that can be implemented to a AP literature class, because the work is extensive like that the literature is there, but you're learning about where restorative justice came from. Oh, it started back in the 70s when they tried to get someone that convicted a crime and who was harming the crime to sit down and have a conversation. Right? And that's where restorative justice came from. Then they turned it to restorative practices more in the 80s and 90s into schools, right? To be able to do that. Now it's starting to be put into schools, and it's popular to like replace discipline because of the statistics saying kids that get suspended don't really, that like kids are not like, it's not working, right? And then it's leading to this thing called the school to prison pipeline, where kids are getting conditioned in school to get suspended, expelled, nobody learns, they go into the street, and then the way they dealt with their teachers is how they're dealing with law enforcement, and then it's causing them to get in jail. And 32% of kids that are in juvenile detention centers are kids with mentally disabled like disabilities, right? So like they just weren't assessed right.
They weren't identified.
Exactly. And also, there's a crazy thing. Black and Latino people in public school systems make up 29% of the population in public schools, right? Across the nation. Yet 70% of in-school arrests are Black and Latino kids.
In-school arrests.
In-school arrests.
What's crazy is I'm hearing that they arresting them as young as 10 in school.
Exactly. And if you look at the offenses, and like it's crazy, 95% of these offenses are non-violent.
And we taking our children to jail and giving them records.
It's for like kid, and it's like 3 strikes on uniform, 3 strikes on like language, or like, you know what I mean, like stuff that isn't violent. You know what I mean? It's like we're being conditioned. And then we had on my podcast, I brought in a lawyer that Drew Wiley, and he does his business out here where he does his practice, and then he created his own nonprofit, which is called Restoring Justice, where he gives support to people that can't have the funds to get a lawyer to defend them.
Gotcha.
And his whole mission, like we talking, and I'm realizing in our podcast, like, things ain't that different. Like what's happening in these schools from elementary all the way to prison is the same stuff. The thing is, you have less opportunity the older you get. You know what I mean? Less chance. You might meet one person as you're going up that you can hear and be like, oh snap, okay, let me start changing my ways. Where what he explained, when you at that level, it's like you don't have people around.
It's like you put yourself in a circle.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? Once you get in that age, and man, that's wild. And you take it back, because I could think back, like you say, restorative justice in the 90s. I was in a peer mediating group, and at the time I didn't have a clue what it was, and I was asked to be a peer mediator where I would sit down with 2 of my peers who had issues in the classroom and see if we can talk it out. And I thought it was a pretty cool thing at the time. But institutionalizing our children at a very young age, now your program, beautiful, but from the outside with parents, what can they do to make sure that these laws are changed within these schools? What is your suggestion?
That's what I think, and that's what I want to get to. I'm trying to get into the door through schools. Like I said, I started my business. I quit my job in June, and I started my business. I'm still a couple months in where I'm trying to build programs and more platforms, even using my podcast and getting on podcasts like yours, where I'm getting a message out there, where I'm building stuff. So my next thing is, how do I get the parents involved, right? Because it's full circle, because I'm noticing what happens within the confines of 8 hours, right? There's only so much you can do in that 8 hours, and then you're exposed to the complete opposite sometimes when you get home. And it's not necessarily your fault, the way things are set up, where people don't have the funds to be able to maintain it. A lot of stress comes from money, right? Not having money, right, in a household will look a lot different than someone that has money in the household, right? So like being able to have that understanding and build these conversations and bridge the gap. So like so what I offer too, so I got my curriculum, and now I'm speaking off of the curriculum. I'm giving training to teachers. So I do professional developments in schools for teachers. And then I also offer speaking engagements for students and I come in a couple times a year to check and help implement my curriculum. I have 2 schools in New York City that have invested in my program and are using the curriculum now.
Right.
And I'm working with HISD, Houston Independent School District, to get it in over here as
That's
well.
pretty cool.
And I'm trying to get into doing parent involvement as well, where I do parents. This sometimes in the past where I did parent engagements, where I would do like an event in the day for the students. After school, I'll do something with the teachers, and then after that, I'll do like a conference for the parents.
Right.
Right.
And how does it look with the teachers? What are you instilling in the teachers?
I think with my experience, like being in it, it helps. Like I was there, right? And although I may be young, that's where it comes into like, I don't want to ever come across like I know it all, right? I'm still learning myself. We're all like in development, right? Where it never stops. But I think it's all about exposing people to certain things that they haven't thought about, right? Because of their days being so stacked up, or they don't have the space to think about it, right? And for me, aligning everything is the mission. So when I go into teachers, it's about like, how do we align what's happening in this forum at school to what's happening outside of school? How can you align it? Because I've seen what can happen if I take what I do at school with my wife, with my kid, and then it just, you know what I mean? Everything just works better, right? So like being able to get teachers to identify that and then start saying like, my mission is, so I do these engagements. And when I say engagements, I don't just go up there and speak for like 45 minutes, 60 minutes. Everybody's moving. I get people talking. I get people like doing activities and actually practicing and seeing like, oh snap, this works, right? So, and then they can walk away with something. I want the teachers to walk away and like, this is my mission every time I go out, and I was able to achieve this a couple times so far, and I want to continue achieving this, where I get teachers to walk away like, oh snap, I need to go talk to this person when I get home. I need to go talk to this person over the weekend. Like I need to fix that.
Well, it touches more. It goes outside of school. Exactly. Like you say, it's a lifestyle.
I think, and the thing is, people, and not only in education, I think overall, people work to get titles, right? And then when you get a title, you build this entitlement that things supposed to go a certain way. And in education, people haven't dealt with their trauma and their stuff in their regular lives with their peers and the people that are in their realm, right? And then they go into these spaces in schools without dealing with that stuff, and then going into these schools with a title now, expecting kids to do a certain thing and give you that respect that you don't even get outside these walls, right?
You expecting to get that just off of your title.
Exactly, and real recognize real, right? So kids will smell fake from a mile away. So why not? Let's get as authentic and as real with ourselves first before we get in that space and we're going toe to toe with a student when it shouldn't even be that, right? Because we're all caught up in ourselves. When a kid curses you out, that's a cry for help. And you as an adult need to identify that I am not bigger by showing who's boss. I'm bigger by saying, oh snap, how can I support this kid?
Something's wrong.
Yeah, because most times a kid curses you out, you sit down and have a conversation with that kid and you find out like, oh shit, he went through that last night. I don't know what I would do if I didn't have a place to sleep last night. Right? So I think it's all about being able to have those conversations and then looking ourselves like, we all have biases. We all do. And we need to identify, like, for real, there are people out there, and I'm going to be honest, there are people out there that are teachers or administrators, and they see kids that remind them of people that rubbed them the wrong way when they were kids.
And they taking it out on them.
And unconsciously, but it happens where they don't even know. So I don't even blame them. It's like, you just never were aware of this. And for me, like I tell people all the time, like, this is why I married my wife. I can have people to kiss my ass all day. I can have people to just be like all nice to me and all that. I want to continue to grow. So my mission was to get real people around me. Call me stupid.
There's not gonna be your yes man.
Exactly. Tell me
they're gonna challenge you on things.
Exactly. Call me out on my shit. Tell me when I'm gonna when I'm on bullshit. My wife was one of the first people to be able to look at me and tell me, yo, that's stupid. What are you doing? You look this way, in a way where she's helping me so I don't look stupid out there. Right.
And them the people you always look back and you respect. Somebody that's gonna give it to you real, no matter how it makes you feel at that particular time. Because once you calm down and really look at it and analyze, you can be like, all right, They had a point. I was tripping. I was out there looking
Exactly.
bad. About to have us both out there looking bad.
Exactly.
You know, and they prevented that. So I appreciate it.
And I think people that get scared off of that comment is also, you got to be aware of intent. You got to see the actions of a person when they give you that information.
Right.
My wife has always shown me, she has a track record of like showing me that she's for the good, right, in me. Right. So it's never from a place. So I could get mad, then I'll just think about her track record, like, but she's never steered me wrong. Right. And getting those people in your life is more important, right? To be able to address that. And some of us go through life not having that. And we get these high positions and then and then when someone hits us with that, we're like in shock. And then sometimes we react wrong. And that, honestly, that is what's happening with law enforcement, where they're getting shocked, not being exposed to a certain type of behavior or communication. And then they're put in a situation where they're in shock and then they react like we're human. We're going to react bad in some cases if we don't know what it is. And if we haven't dealt with our trauma, we're going to like keep on reacting bad. And I think it's all about having those conversations with not only administrators, law enforcement, bridging the gap
across the board. Yeah, because even with and it's restorative justice in, you know, in the legal realm of it too, instead of just locking people up, trying to get them rehabilitated. Again, asking that question, why, what's going on? You catch a person stealing out the store, why are you stealing? I don't have a job, I don't have food, this is how I make a means to the end right now, ends to the mean. So you ask these questions, why, you can rehabilitate this person. If they have an addiction, help them get out that addiction, help them get a job, which in the long run, you may spend a lump sum of money right there rehabilitating that person, but in the long run, you will help this person get out the street for good, just by asking the question, why. So it's definitely an important thing. So restorative justice, from what I'm hearing, is creating an environment where you can be open and transparent about what you're feeling, and it being received in a loving manner, a loving environment, to where when a person is correcting you on negative actions, they're coming from a loving place and just wanting to see you, you know, do the best in your life and not go wrong. So that's what it is from what I'm hearing. And then translating success is where you took your own personal experiences in your life, and then you created a curriculum that people can take with them whenever you do speak on restorative justice and how to implement this in the classroom. And that's a beautiful thing you have going, man. So,
and one thing off of that too, that if to help people to hit it home with like a statement, to put it all into one, exposure to vulnerability in a different way. We're told that vulnerability is weakness, and that's bullshit. I'm telling you right now, that killed my father. Right, and that kills a lot of men.
That's how a lot of fights start, because that's how what you're looking at. Because when I'm looking at you, the person who feel like, man, why are you looking at me? Do he see what's wrong with me right now?
Exactly. That's exactly what it is.
Do he see it on my face what happened to me last night?
I don't want to look weak. I'm going to be taken advantage of. And trust me, like, I still do shit because I come from that too. Like, there's a reason why I tuck in my chain still. Because I grew up in communities that you can't just be walking around flossing all the time because you're going to be tested. So like for me, I tuck in my chain unconsciously, right? I don't show off my jewelry. Like if I know I'm going to certain areas, certain blocks, like I don't look a certain way, right? Unconsciously, right? Because we don't want to look weak and we have to protect ourselves. But I think we protect ourselves more by identifying ourselves better, more and more, and understanding why we do what we do. And I keep on saying this statement, and I'm trying to build it all over. This power and vulnerability. The more you tap into it, the more a man you are. Because I think we're told we're trying to be the biggest man or whatever, but the biggest man is the one that knows himself best. Like
and even coming from a spiritual place, you know, and that's just something I believe in. You know, God, He can help you best when you're weak. You know, because you're vulnerable at that time. He know that you're gonna sit there at His feet and take His instruction, because you will do whatever it takes to get out of that situation
Word.
when you're vulnerable. So I feel like it being vulnerable is also being humble because you're open to listen and take constructive criticism. Um, yeah, man, we got a lot to work on in our communities, especially with being open to what we are exposed to every day, like PTSD. Like that's something I want to start talking about in our communities, man. I remember one time we took a group of kids to the Rockets game, and they were shooting the cannons. No, it wasn't the Rockets game. It was the Astros. And every time they scored, the cannons go off.
And it's scary.
Man, them kids were scared out of their mind. I'm like, what? So I thought back where they live, where they from. When they hear that type of noises, his run, something horrible going on, and that's what's going on in our communities, man. And we have to start identifying everything for what it really is, and have to be open to receive it. And then once we can receive it, we can do something about it. And man, you got a beautiful thing going on. So what do you have coming up? Any events? What you got going on?
The next thing I got going on, I'm working with a couple schools in New York City, so I'm going back and forth. They implemented my curriculum. New Vision High School for humanities in the Bronx has started it. And on January 31st, I'm headlining my first event where I'm keynoting and I'm doing demos of my lesson in front of HISD, Houston Independent School Districts. And I'm going to be sharing what I've been doing, and they'll decide to invest into putting it into all the districts where it'll be a click away where people could just be like, I want restorative practices. Let me click the curriculum and then bring me in to like help do PDs, professional developments for teachers, do speaking engagements for students, or work in any capacity to start building the practice. Basically, get my toe in the door.
Right.
And what I'm planning to do is to bust the door wide open.
That's what's up, man. I'm sitting here looking at you in amazement. Like it's an amazing thing that you got going, man. You really got it going, and wish you the best. And I'm sure HISD is going to receive it well. Hopefully you'll be in Aldine ISD soon.
I'm hoping. I'm trying to get all over.
Yeah, we've been working on some things, and I heard what you said about the economic side of it. With when you're talking to the parents and you find out that the money may not be there at home, they may be going through financial issues, financial struggles. That's what Mangrove is working on. Fed Up Family Entrepreneur Development for Underprivileged. So
I like that.
That'll be a side of it to where when we do identify these issues in these households, maybe we can teach these children these skills, even to the point instead of suspending the child or sending them to SAC for a day. If we have a landscaping company that we can send them out to, put in some work,
it's better.
Learn a skill, and then, hey, if they take a liking to it and really learn it, it can become a way for them to make money and provide for their family.
And off of what you were saying with, I love that, but what you were saying with helping the families out, I know for a fact, last week, I was at New Vision High School for Humanities in the Bronx, and I ran classes all day. Like teachers needed time to put in their grades. So I was like, yo, let me just take over this seminar class. And I did classes all day, and I did circle with seniors. And just doing the work, like getting vulnerable, this and that. One class, we got so deep, and then they started talking about like asking me real questions, money questions. You know what I mean? Like, what should I think about? And like, how do we raise debt? Like, they want this information, but they're not getting it, right? But like, how do we get these parents to understand going to a college that you can't afford? Like, if there are studies done, they're out there, that college is this money thing, right? Names are just money. You need to be smart, as into like, how do we break the cycle, right? Because we get these loans and we're trapped. Then, like, if you look at it, like a kid goes to this big town college because first generation going to college, you're just hearing a big name, you got to go through it.
Happy.
You get this loan, right? And this loan is going to get you trapped for the next 50 to 60 years. That's how they're looking at it. And that's going to force you to get a job you do not like. And then it's going to start the trauma, and you're going to start to try to figure it out because you're trapped already. And then you're trying to move out, you get a car loan. You get a house loan, and then it just keeps on spiraling out of control where you $500,000 in debt. And that's what happened to my family. My mother, my dad only had a high school education. He married, the smartest thing he ever did was marry a college educated woman, right? Where she got her master's and everything, but like, my mom figured out everything for herself. She was a first generation. And like the debt just kept building up. And my mission now is to break the cycle with that too. Like for now, it's like me and my wife on this mission to erase debt, right? And then being able to invest and then teach my daughter, like, you know what I mean? Don't worry about the names and all that. What do you need? What do you want to do? Right? And then how do we get you to a point after you get your degree debt free? What do you want to invest in? Where you want to go? Right.
Definitely need to teach home ownership, things like that. Have programs where, you know, you can come out of college, just 1 year rental history and get a home, you know, but you have to keep your credit clear. But those are things that, like you say, we're just going to have to continue to work together for. And you know, we were talking about it earlier, you was asking, you know, Mangrove Community, that's what it's all about. We have restorative justice. So, you know, we couple that together with a financial literacy program, entrepreneurship program, and things like that, and we're really building our community from all sides. So where we're talking about it, we're making ourselves vulnerable to, once we figure out, okay, well, this is what your issue is, here we have a resource to help you and your family with it, whether it's in school or out of school, to where the communities are all the way connected, both in and out. There's no reason why children should take these things home and nobody knows about it. We have to become connected as a community. It takes a village to raise a child.
For sure.
And that village has to be both in and outside of the schools, man.
For sure. And I think the last thing I would like to add on that, for me, and this is what kids go through. Like I mentored a couple kids that had to go through this process too. Sometimes we so angry at who's not there for us that we don't see who's actually there, right? We're so focused on it's not my father that you don't see your coach, that you don't see that teacher, right? And being able to drop that, like I got to a point and my father brought it to my attention too, and my coach brought it up to my attention, like you need to thank your father because he never got in the way. There's some people that have pride that don't let other men into their son's life because it becomes a pride thing. I need to do that. Even if they can't. My father knew he couldn't fit certain boxes. So he built relationships with these other men and allowed the relationship to build. So my Coach Powell was a huge mentor of mine growing up. Smooth old black man that, you know, he would go into the hood and the suit and give respect from everybody and be able to like build relationships. And he had a household with family, with like everything looked like what I seen on TV, like the Fresh Prince experience, right? So I was exposed to that. But like being able to let go of like, okay, my father can fit these boxes, then I gotta allow other people to fit these boxes. And that's how networking goes, and that's how you grow. Like people are supposed to do certain things for your life, right? You can't fit a square into a circle, right? And vice versa. Take it for what it is, and for however long you got it, and know that might change over time. Like it might be another person in your life at certain experiences.
I just refer to it as a sample game. You know, you just take a little piece, you sample here, sample there, you add it to yourself. So that's what I refer to it as, man. But yeah, so man, beautiful thing. We definitely gonna have to connect.
For sure.
Restorative justice, man. Asking the question why. We need to start asking the question why in our communities instead of, you know, like you say, trying to fit these people into these boxes or telling people you can change without trying to put ourselves in their shoes and see what it really is to live with an addiction or to live, you know, have gone through abuse and things like that and see how it affects your everyday relationship. We need to have these open conversations with one another, both inside the schools, outside of the schools. You know, Carlos Malave, Translating Success, check them out. You know, it's a short read, but I feel like, you know, each chapter is packed with powerful information, powerful knowledge, you know, life experiences and things like that. So check them out. We look forward to seeing you in the school districts, man. Thank you for everything that you're doing.
No problem, man. I appreciate you.
Yes,
And
sir.
also, if y'all wanna follow me, I'm also on Instagram, CJ Motivation. I got a YouTube channel, Carlos J Malave. Twitter, CJ Motivation. What else? TikTok. I'm on as many platforms as possible. You just look me up; it'll pop up. My mission is also to, I post daily to like help, whatever like what I feel needs to be out there to get a kid or an adult to ask a question in their lives to like continue. So this isn't something that I do from time to time. It's a daily thing for me, and I try to be as vulnerable as possible so y'all can like see me and possibly it'll spark something in you to like do what you need to do in your situation. So
Man, thank you. Hey, he say he not new to this, he true to this. So it's
ooh, I like
it's
that.
daily life for
I
him.
like that.
So
I like
again,
that.
we appreciate it, man. Hey, love and blessings, peace to everyone. I hope this was informative and motivational for you. Thank you.
Man. Thank you for having me, man.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate you.